Welcome to the Nerdist Podcast number 810. Now let's go to the Nerdist Community Corkboard. Christina Carroll writes, I thought the community might be interested in an historic show coming up at the Society of Illustrators in New York City this June. It's called Point of Vision and celebrates women illustrators in the science fiction and fantasy genres. The show is curated by award-winning art directors Irene Gallo and Lauren Panepinto. It's Tor Books and Orbit Books, respectfully. There's going to be tons of beautiful original art on display, and many artists will be in attendance for the opening. The show runs from June 8th to August 20th, and the opening reception is on June 10th. All the info can be found. This is a tiny URL. Go to tiny.cc/Society Illustrators. Thank you, Christina Carroll. Also, Ronnie Mairns Dio writes, hello, I'm a skater with a Chicago outfit roller derby in Chicago, and I thought it'd be appropriate to mention this on the Nerdist Community Corkboard. They have several players named after Nerdist-friendly topics. Treble Alliance, Antimatter, Kilojoules, Maven Darkholm, and even NSO, non-skating official, named Buenos Tardes. We hold home bouts during the summertime in Chicago, generally once a month on Saturday nights. We'd love to recruit some new roller derby fans to the games. Upcoming dates are June 18th and July 30th at the Windy City Fieldhouse at 2367 West Logan Boulevard. Doors at 6. First game's at 7. And you can buy reduced price tickets ahead of time or pay at the door. Find out more info at ChicagoOutfitRollerDerby.com. This episode is Chuck Lorre and Mayim Bialik. They're promoting Big Bang Theory Thursday nights at 8 p.m. on CBS, who are two incredibly smart people. Mayim Bialik is rad. She's just ridiculously smart. She's smarter than you, but not in a way that makes you feel bad about yourself. You're just like, oh, you're smart, and I want you to tell me things so I can learn stuff. And Chuck is, the guy is one of the most prolific producers in television. So it was really, really great to sit down and chat with them in the new podcast room, although it's not as new anymore, but still fresh. It's called the Fresh Podcast Room. But anyway, I'd like to thank them for coming on and giving us time. The Nerdist Podcast, episode number 810, with Chuck Lorre and Mayim Bialik.
Now entering Nerdist.com.
It's like he heard me. It's like he heard me.
Let's go, man. Good to see you. Nice to see you, too.
Hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. This is our new podcast room. Do you feel comfortable, or do you feel weirdly squished up next to the table? No.
They suggested that.
Just follow it. I'll just do it from like an
Matt.
inch, where you just see me in your peripheral vision.
Sounds not nice.
Like the plot of It Follows.
Thanks,
How are you, Chris?
Matt, how are you? Why are you asking me? Mayim and Chuck are here.
We've already talked for a while.
Okay,
We already got the pleasantries. We're good.
You guys are all square then.
We're fine.
So you have nothing else to offer this conversation at this point? Okay,
No.
Good. Well, you sit there.
Yep.
I just did a thing for Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it was his show, and we kept throwing to clips of it. Was all built around his conversation with you.
Oh.
Which was great.
We had a really good time. I could say a lot of things. He's amazing in and of himself, but obviously, as a public person, which I am and which he is, who tries to put a positive face on like all things science and physics, it was really awesome to be in a room with him.
Meeting educators who actually can convey these big ticket items to people in conversational ways. There's so much incredible value in it. And his show is really fun. He shoots it at the I was in New York, and he shoots it at the Hayden Planetarium.
Yeah.
And you just throw to clips, and there's 100 people there just sipping wine and talking about physics. It's very fancy and upscale and academic.
I think a lot of it is about the palatability, of science. How approachable can you make it? How much can you have people drinking wine while talking about it? And he's really achieved that so well.
Do you ever feel weird when people are like, But you're an actor, and you studied neuroscience,
and you're a woman.
I mean, it was just like, do you ever feel weird? Like, do you ever find yourself in those interviews where you're like, calm down, you know?
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, I do get that a lot about and you're female, and you have children.
Who would say "and you're female"?
Plenty of people.
Who would say that?
Plenty of people. There's a lot of things about me, I've been told, that don't often, fit into one neat box or another, and that's okay. I'm okay with it.
You need to tell people to open their fucking minds.
I don't use that F-bomb when I say that.
I'm sorry.
But yeah,
I apologize.
I mean, I can use that F-bomb.
Sure.
But yeah, I usually just say open your friggin' mind.
Maybe you need to step it up. Come to the dark side. I don't know if you remember this, Chuck Lorre. I moderated your Big Bang panel 5 years ago, and it was really fun.
It was great.
But it was that moment where someone said something about Doctor Who, and I can't remember who it was on the panel was like, "Oh, I don't watch Doctor Who," and the crowd was like, "Oh!" And I'm like, give them a fucking break. They're actors. Like, they don't have to know everything about everything all the time.
It does put the guys on the cast on the spot a lot.
Yeah,
the intent, the desire for them to be like the characters.
Yeah.
They seem to be okay with it. Everybody seems okay with the fact we're not these.
Because
I'm
there
people.
as everyone's punching bag. Like, if you have a D&D question, take it to Mayim. If you have a superhero question, take it to Mayim. Yeah, I think that's generally kind of what it feels like.
If you have a neuroscience question,
take it to Mayim.
Yeah.
No, but I think
if you have a
pop
culture question, take it to the writers.
That's right.
That's all. They that's and that makes perfect sense.
But you said something really interesting that always stuck out with me on that panel, where I said, you've successfully made a show about nerds, and you go, no, I've made a show about people in relationships. It's actually not. That's just like a filter. It's not that, but it's still just about people.
I think in the beginning, anyway, the intent was to do a show about really, really smart people who have trouble navigating life.
Yeah,
and the nerd geek labels came later. I didn't really anticipate that. Oddly enough,
is that how you pitched the show?
We pitched the show as physicists, string theory, quantum mechanics, beautiful minds without the paranoid schizophrenia.
It's coming next season.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But the idea that these guys and then later the ladies that we introduced were extraordinary minds that struggled with the mundane. And that was the premise of the show, not that they were nerds or geeks or anything like that. And but that stuck. So,
I mean, it's interesting to see, some people are like, "Oh my God, the show is." I completely sympathize. I empathize with a lot of these characters, but then there's other people in the nerd community who are like, "That's not how we are." It is interesting to see what the dividing line is.
I think inherently them complaining, "That's not how we are," is how they are.
So you think that
the show upsetting you is its own its condemnation?
That's their litmus test.
Really.
I think it's really interesting, and as someone who has to lead all these shows, that there's such this interestingly disparate offering of characters on all of your different shows. Like, how do you manage those rooms? Like, how do you come in and sort of, okay, this is appropriate for this room, and this is appropriate for this show over here, because it's a totally different kind of show, all at the same time?
The secret is inefficiency.
I thought you were going to say the secret is it's all Dharma and Greg with different names.
No, the secret is collaboration, really. I mean, on each show there's a staff that's that show and dedicated and eating, sleeping, drinking that show. And you can't, TV doesn't resolve itself to a one-man show. It's ridiculous. Wouldn't happen.
I think it's interesting that both of you, what's great about both of you being here is that you both have multiple careers and multiple successful careers. And you're both not just defined by one thing, because I know you're a musician and you're studying neuroscience, and are you actively working? Are you actively sciencing during the shoot season?
No, I got my doctorate in 2007, and I taught for about 5 years in the homeschool community for junior high and high school. I taught neuroscience and biology and chemistry, and I had a toddler and an infant when I started auditioning for things again. I had heard of the Big Bang Theory because I heard that I was mentioned, And I thought it must be like a quiz show. Like, that girl from Blossom, you know, is a neuroscientist. So I didn't know what it was. I mean, you know, and once I auditioned, I was still teaching for the first year or so of working on Big Bang Theory. I was still teaching. And then when I was made a regular in season 4, my full-time life became playing a scientist on TV. I do a lot of outside advocacy for STEM, you know, and I have a website called Grok Nation, and we're starting to do video production for a YouTube channel to try and kind of get more into the science educating, you know, kind of environment. But yeah, my full-time job, I mean, sitcom is a great schedule, but there's not time to also be studying psychoneuroendocrinology.
Well, maybe you're just not trying hard enough. Maybe you don't want it that bad.
Ted Danson did it.
Right. Yeah.
When he was playing Sam Malone, he wrote 3 thesis papers on a unified field theory. It'd be amazing if all of a sudden you found out like Ted Danson had this like mountain of physics work that he didn't want anyone to know about.
But most of it was from the Becker years.
Yeah, it was all from Becker. Yeah, he wrote it all during Becker. But I think that because our culture, I feel like people are being asked to process so much information at all times that it's easy for people to put other people in boxes and go, well, you must do this and you must do this because that is how I must sort my brain. So what do you... How do you kind of reconcile that? Do you just ignore it, or do you just, you know, do you have a stock answer when you're hit with those obvious questions?
No, I mean, I think people can be all sorts of things, and I think I'm trained as a musician myself. Like, there's a lot of different parts of everybody, and to me, that adds to all of our creativity. You know, Jim is a musician, Simon's a musician. Just, you know, everybody has different other parts of them that add to who they are. And I think for me, you know, when I'm asked about what it's like to be an actor and take someone else's words and make them real, it's every life experience you've had leading up to that moment that makes you able to do that as an actor, you know? So to me, these are just all of our kind of collective experiences that pool together and make us who we are.
That's true, but not everyone. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of different interests. Most people have a lot of different interests.
Sure.
Not everyone is able to get a PhD and be on, you know,
right,
and be a successful performer at the same time, and
right,
also have children, and also
right,
be able to perform music and create advocacy for
right,
science. So how do you manage your time?
So, well, my assistant Todd's over there because it's important to have someone who actually helps you physically
Are you Todd?
do things. That's Todd.
Yeah. Todd. I leaned over Todd very closely
You
when
did.
you came in.
You know, honestly, like when I'm asked, and I do a lot of public speaking, I speak to a lot of young people. I don't watch a lot of television, and I don't have a very active social life. And those are not things I'm particularly proud of. And when I was younger, that always made me really on the outs. You know, in junior high and high school, I was always that person. But the fact is, I get a lot more done if I don't plug in every night for 3 or 4 hours to something, and if I'm not out, having a good time. I get a lot. I have a good time in my life, but my idea of fun is different from a lot of people's idea of fun, and that's just kind of who I am. So there's not a magic secret. I don't have a nanny, I don't have a housekeeper. Like, I take care of my own life and I raise my kids, and that's sort of how I work. But in terms of how everything gets done, it's time management with the help of good people. And I have a really good team around me. I've got a really strong group of mainly women, but a couple men who think like I do and work like I do, and that helps. We get work done. I don't have lazy mornings sleeping in. That's just not my lifestyle. I get up and I get life done before my kids get up, and I stay up late, and sometimes I watch, a show or go to the movies. I promise I'm a really good time, but yeah.
I like that you're pitching like, if you hang out with me, I can be really fun. I can be really fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yeah.
What about you? How do you manage your time? Do you do anything that if anything starts to feel too much like work, is it still a hobby to you, or do you like to keep some things not work related, like music?
I guess, music is probably the one thing that I keep, that it allows me to just use a different part of the brain, and it doesn't require 150 people to put on a show. You just go home and turn on the blues channel on satellite radio and play along, and a couple hours will go by.
But would you ever tour live?
I've performed live occasionally around town. Sit in with guys.
Do you like it?
I love it. It's what I did for almost 20 years before television.
That is pretty amazing.
That was my job, and I did it all over the country. I did it in Alaska, and I did it in the Caribbean, and kind of a lot of places in between.
And so what kind of made you decide to pursue something as ridiculously structured and vile as television?
That's a good question. The motivation was children. I had 2 small children, and there wasn't enough protein on the table. So I thought, well, maybe there's no hope of being Lennon, McCartney, Dylan, Hendrix, Clapton, or anybody else. So maybe I can be Gary Marshall. So I actually
That's the next logical step.
It really
Chuck is directing Father's Day in theaters.
Yeah, no, Arbor Day.
Arbor Day.
Yeah, no, it's good. Passover.
Purim, the musical.
When I was a musician, I was enamored with. I was enamored with rock and roll growing up in the '60s, but I was also became completely amazed and infatuated with Randy Newman, and I thought that's what I want to do. I want to write songs like that with a point of view where he would have a strange point of view. He would have a kind of an obnoxious point of view, and it was hilarious. And there wasn't much call for that.
Yeah.
So, but I was writing songs like that. And,
Did you ever release any of them? Would you?
no, they were terrible. They're pretty much terrible. One song over a period of about 15 years, I had one song that Debbie Harry covered called "French Kissin' in the USA."
Oh yeah. Oh, you wrote that?
Yeah.
I know that song.
You know that song?
That was kind of a hit on MTV for a while.
Kinda, yeah.
French Kissin' in the USA.
Yeah.
I remember the song.
Yeah, that was it. And I just remember thinking, these children still require food. They require food. They insist on going to the dentist, and
They insist, Dad, we must go to the dentist.
No.
I insist.
It really hurts.
I must
man up, sir. But TV seemed like a much more reliable way of taking care.
Which is really odd to hear because it's TV. I mean, yes, in its perfect form, it is very reliable, and to getting to that point,
Coming from music, it seemed as stable as can be.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. I mean, the music industry was exciting to be even part of the fringe of it, but it was not something I could count on. And frankly, I looking back, I just didn't have the chops. I mean, I saw some people who did. I got near a couple of people that had the kind of chops that went on to do extraordinary things, and you could tell. That guy's hearing something I'm not. And it hurts.
But at least you didn't give it up. You just pursued another thing while you were still doing it.
Yeah. And I stumbled into the Turtles too.
You did. You wrote the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Oh, I do.
Which was the great source of pride for my then young children, because finally he's done something. So
That's a pretty big deal. It's in season 2 of Kimmy Schmidt. There's that joke.
Somebody sent me that clip. That's weird.
She's like, Kimmy, she's in a bunker. That's the premise of the show. She comes out and now she's living life, and she's like trying to reference things that kids might like nowadays. And she goes, Pogs, and they're like, no, blah blah blah. She goes, Ninja Turtles, and she goes, yeah, that's a thing. And she goes, how is that still a thing? And then she comes into the house singing that song, and she goes, that's a really catchy song. Whoever wrote that should be a billionaire. And she walks by a giant framed poster that says Chuck Lorre wrote that song.
That's amazing.
It's pretty weird, right?
It's like such a writer's room joke that they just let go in there.
Well, must be nice.
Yeah, right.
But it's also kind of a crazy life thing. Because I saw an interview with you where you explained the whole process, and you're like, we had no time. We had $2,000, and we had to record it in the studio. Journey was recording an album from like midnight to 8, and then that thing became something that will outlive all of us. For that one little unexpected nugget.
Who knew? I mean, the Turtles, Flo and Eddie, were supposed to do the theme song.
Oh, wow.
That
makes sense, I
and
suppose.
from what little I understand, the producer of those first few episodes, and the initial order, I think, was for 6. They had nobody knew. They ordered 6 episodes to see what would happen. And from what I remember, the guy called me, Fred Wolf, wonderful guy, and he said, "I'm kind of stuck. They never delivered. they just blew."
You mean
it off.
the band, the Turtles from the 60s?
They blew it off. They just never delivered, and we need a theme song, and we need to score these 6 episodes in a week or something, in a couple of weeks. Can you still interested? And I said, yeah, because I still wanted music to be part of my life. So he gave us $2,500 to do a demo, and that demo was the master recording for like 10 years. And the voices, that's a fact, Jack, and all those little voices. That was me.
Oh my God!
And we just VSO'd it. We sped it up so that it would sound like a cartoon voice. And I remember saying to him, "You're going to want the actual actors, to put their voices on this." He goes, "It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine. No one's going to know."
So you're responsible for the phrase Michelangelo is a party dude?
Absolutely. Yeah. Which rhymes, as you remember, with rude.
Yeah, Raphael. As we all
cool
know.
but rude.
Damn it! We need something to express that he enjoys going to parties all the time, and he's a dude. But he doesn't have manners. I don't know what we're supposed to.
Did they outline it for you and go, "Here are the turtles, and here's generally what they do"?
We had. We might have had the first episode, a rough cut of the first episode, and we had a half a dozen of the original comics, which were black and white comics. They were garage printed comics.
It was a dark kind, like it was an underground.
It was an underground comic, and nobody knew anything about what this was going to be. I mean, it was completely blind, and then they ordered 6 more, and then they ordered 7 more, and then they want 65. And Dennis Brown and I, who wrote the song and were doing the scoring, were like, I think something's happening here. And then CBS put it on CBS, in addition to the stuff that was being made for syndication.
Oh my God!
And then there was the Nintendo games.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really funny. It's not funny. It wasn't funny then. Dennis and I were called into an office, I think in Century City. At some point, this thing had become a phenomenon. And the video games were everywhere, and arcade games, and video cassettes. And we were ushered into a room with a bunch of lawyers who said, we're not going to be paying you for the arcade games, video cassettes, and Nintendo games for the music. And if you want to make a deal out of it, we're just going to strip your music off of everything.
Oh, shit.
And I said, well, why are you not going to pay us? And he went, we don't want to.
At least you appreciate the honesty behind that.
And we signed away our rights to all that stuff.
Because they basically...
we didn't have a lawyer. We were just 2 idiots sitting there, 2 guitar players sitting there going, oh, okay. Well, you can leave the stuff's going to stay on the TV show. Okay.
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
It was hilarious.
Wow.
I mean, that sounds like if you saw that in like a bad 80s movie and some guy was like, we're just not going to pay you. Like,
And we're tearing down the youth center.
Now you're doing the voices with a great deal of hostility. It was quite gentlemanly.
Okay.
We really don't want to pay you.
We just don't feel like it.
Really, it's too much money.
Also, we're tearing down the youth center.
Yeah, it was very calm.
Unless you can stage a breakdance competition.
But we were just thrilled to stay part of it.
I mean, the bummer part about that is that they really couldn't. They were making shit tons of money. Like, there was no reason to not go, well, let's just give these guys, it'll be a fraction of what we're making.
Let's steal a lot and then give them something.
Did that teach you anything about how you...
Bring a lawyer.
Don't
show up. Don't show up with a good attitude. Bring a lawyer.
But when you kind of became when you became the guy on the other side of the table, did that change how you deal with people?
Well, it just, I'm not in the business dealings of what I do. I'm not. When negotiations are going on, I'm not in that room. But it's easier to just play fair.
Yeah.
It's just easier. It's less stress and strain for everybody. So, do
you write the themes to your shows?
I co-wrote the theme to 2.5 Men.
Nice.
But
I didn't know that.
But when it came time to do the Big Bang theme, we got an opportunity to work with Ed Robertson and the Bare Naked Ladies, and again, they were going to do a much better job, and they did. It was clear. Get the guys who do it well.
I was enjoying your slot machine this weekend at the.
Oh yeah, you saw the slot
giant
machine.
one.
It's hard to.
Three wheels.
Did you understand it?
It's ridiculous. You bet on a penny slot. You bet $6, and then you have 4 games going at the same time, and then you hit a bonus, and then it's one of the wheels, and then there's another wheel. It's
Do you have to actually be? It's so good. You have to be a physicist to understand
Yeah.
how the slot machine works.
It's a
didn't
lot
stop
going
me
on.
from sinking some money into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Enjoy that. I felt bad
Thank
about the
you.
turtle thing.
He's giving back.
Don't feel bad about it. Very grateful about
Chuck
the
really got
turtles.
screwed in the turtle thing. Let's give him some money back.
Everybody feels bad for Chuck.
I mean, this kind of this era of like, let's put just recognizable things onto a slot machine is kind of genius.
I love it.
I love the fact that you play slot machines.
Oh, God.
I mean, just why don't you
Ridiculous
just
amount.
set your wallet on fire?
He doesn't care. Matt will
Less
drive
fun.
to Vegas for like 4 hours, play a bunch of slots, and then drive home. He just doesn't care.
My wife and I went this weekend.
He was hunting down the Cheers slot machine for a while, and
for
then
so
that
long.
went extinct, and he
It's
couldn't.
gone.
You
No
get-
longer in Las
you-
Vegas. I can't find it.
You get the reason why those buildings are so tall.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's because you know. Maybe you didn't know.
Every time I lose at a table game, I say, "This is for Sheldon Ellison." And then I push it across the table. The dealers laugh.
I just think that it's such a crazy. I mean, even back then, I feel like the business was still trying to understand what IP meant and how to manage all of it, and now it just feels crazy because that deal that you had to go in, where they told you that. They would have made that today. They would make all of that up front, and any idea that you would have had during the production
it was
of
much
that
more
thing.
casual. Everything was, there were still handshake deals back then.
A lot of Michelangelos running around, you know.
So it was, it was the beginning of the corporatization of all this stuff too. Those big corporations were coming in, all this stuff then.
So, at what point did you, when you kind of made the decision, like I'm going to go into television? Did you just write a script that weekend, or what did you do?
I think my big break came. I knew a guy who lived next door to Betty White.
The Chuck Lorre story.
Page 1.
Starting way too at the beginning, and I thought, well, he lives next door to Betty White. I like the Golden Girls. I thought it was a brilliant show.
That show holds up, by the way.
Great
sure,
show.
You know,
That
You got Valley in there. You had
Mitch Hurwitz,
Mitch in there.
Mark Cherry.
Susan Harris
Susan
was
Harris.
Susan Harris.
genius, and it was a brilliantly written and cast and produced show. So I love this show. He lives next door to Betty White. I'll write an episode featuring Betty White. He'll give it to her, and my career will begin.
Yep.
And your children will go to the
And
dentist.
my children will actually get braces.
They'll finally
Yes,
get braces,
yeah.
and they'll finally get some food.
And but first he had to like the script, and he did, and he did give it to Betty, and she sent me a handwritten note. It was a remarkable experience, saying that she loved the script. She was bringing it to the producers, and I thought, well, that's it. I'm on my way. My career has begun. Protein for everybody.
Protein and braces.
A few
You
weeks.
get salmon. You get pork.
Everybody. What do you want?
Don't
What do you want?
protein, kids.
What do you want? No more carbohydrates. Let's go. And then a few weeks later, I got the script came back in the mail with a form letter from Whit Thomas saying it was not up to our standards. Thank you very much for your submission. And I have to think, I didn't know at the time, what the looks on the producers' faces must have been as Ms. White came in and put the script on the desk and said, "My neighbor gave me this. I think it's pretty good. We should do it." It's amazing it didn't come in ashes in a bag, that they didn't set it on fire. But
What was the script about?
it was actually it's taken a story from my life, how my mother responded to my father's passing, and what happened, and how she emotionally responded to his passing, and Betty White's character coming to grips with how she had not really processed his death, and it was meaningful to me. So I think for a first time writer, it did get me work. Not at the Golden Girls.
Did you have the nightgown cheesecake scene in there?
No,
Well, that's why it didn't go.
There you
That's
go.
why they didn't take it.
We could try again.
but it did get.
But then
me.
Sophia's got to come in and say something saucy. And
Well, sometimes Sophia starts the cheesecake.
she does.
Yeah.
It's still funny. I fucking love that show. But I think it's a lot of first-time writers don't necessarily. I think it's a good. I still think it was a successful attempt on your part because a lot of first-time writers will lead with jokes over story.
Yeah.
So they'll try to, because I've heard that one of the most common spec scripts is a Simpsons script, and it's also the impossible one to spec because they always just do the same one-dimensional jokes from all the characters, and they don't focus enough on the story. So what was it that made you go, I need this to be a good story?
I wanted to write something that I could get my teeth into, that something that meant something to me, you know. And I got a handwritten note from Betty White. So I
Did you keep it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh yeah. No, it was you know, it actually encouraged me. Even though the script was rejected, it encouraged me to keep trying.
And so do you handle rejection pretty well?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. It hurts.
Okay, good.
You understand how that works, right?
No, I do, but you know,
you don't.
But some people respond to that by going, "Well, I'm never going to do this thing again because it hurts," and other people go, "Well, this hurts, but I'm going to figure out how to make it not hurt."
Oh no, you it's what's the cliche?
Fall
It's
down,
not how many
no.
times you fall down; it's how many times you get up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Fall down 9 times, get up 10.
get up 10. And I honestly believe
only got up
that's actually again, it goes back to it's easy to do when there's people relying on you to, you know, pay the rent.
Yeah.
You know, if it was just me, I'm a guitar player now. I'm leaving here to go play a bar mitzvah at the Sportsman's Lodge.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's really great.
That's what would be right
play my
now.
wedding. You're going to play my wedding.
Yeah,
Chuck Lorre on the stream.
So it changes your perspective when you're a parent.
From that experience, did you start speccing other shows, or did you did?
Yeah, but that Golden Girls script got me work on other shows, and I crawled into the business.
How
Actually,
long?
I was in the business for 6 months just before the writer's strike hit.
Oh,
the
yeah,
first,
yeah.
the
Oh,
87
perfect
writer's
time.
strike. You know, oh boy, we're making some money now. Whoops.
Oh, I can get a free sandwich at Cantor's. Show my card.
Kids, get in the car. We're going to get some protein at
Protein at
Cantor's.
Cantor's.
Hang on, put that down.
Cantor's, you guys don't do dental work too, by any chance? Do you guys do dental
Well,
work?
we got a guy.
We got a guy in the back. You'll love him. But it's but this idea of even switching, because at this point you're in your 30s, right? And you're sort of embarking on this entirely new career.
Yeah. I wrote. I didn't even know what door was going to open, so I wrote a spec Miami Vice.
I was going to guess Magnum.
You need
but
to publish these, Chuck. This has to be your next
Miami
coffee
Vice,
table book.
which got me a meeting in Miami Vice. It was called Miami Vice and the Collins Avenue Kid, and it was about two old Jewish retirees who find a bag of cocaine on the beach, a big bag of cocaine on the beach, decide to go into business. And
this again about your mother?
and yes, and the cops and the bad guys are chasing them through the whole thing. And I had this idea that Art Carney and Mathau would be the two guys. I had it all planned out in my head, and I got a meeting with the Miami Vice producers out of that script, and they said, "It's you got to take out all the jokes." And I went, "Oh, well, why can't you do a funny one?"
One time.
Do one funny one. It was that day I didn't have a second meeting.
So you wait. So
I didn't get called back.
So wait, your Golden Girls spec script was about Ken.
Miami
And
Vice
your
script.
Miami Vice
Somebody
script.
died in the Miami Vice script too.
Okay, good.
One of the guys died too. It was a heartbreaking scene in the third. Yeah.
It was actually
I don't
Betty
know
White's
what to
husband.
do with all this cocaine.
Oh no! I had
My
a seance.
heart.
And the Golden Girls script had a seance in the second act. I'm no idiot.
Okay,
Okay.
I stand corrected.
Wait, hang on a second. Did everything you write take place in Miami?
Huh?
No.
No.
Golden
Well,
Girls
actually,
in Miami Vice?
Yeah. But Miami Vice, the first year, the Michael Mann couple of years were great.
Oh, they were.
It was a
Yeah, but
breakout show.
That pilot's amazing.
You missed a really amazing opportunity to do the long-awaited Golden Girls Miami Vice crossover,
Boy, wouldn't that
where
have been something?
where
Well,
a
they
criminal
kind of-
runs through the Golden
hang on.
Girls house and Crockett and Tubbs
They kind
stay
of,
for dinner.
They kind of accomplished that with the drug dealer that moves in next door. It's the episode of Golden Girls that George Clooney is in. And George Clooney gets shot in the episode, and they all go visit him at the hospital.
Oh my! I don't
That's
know.
a real episode of Golden Girls.
Oh, another one of those. Was it a very special episode? Of
No, it
Golden
wasn't that
Girls?
special.
George Clooney.
Before or
Clooney
after Facts
was
of
a-
Life? Before
got
it was
shot
after
on the
Facts of
It was
Life.
after.
Post-Pax. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
That's
well,
a-
you know a lot of stuff.
You do.
Unfortunately, I watched a lot of. I did the opposite of mine growing up. I just watched television.
No, I watched when I was growing up. I watched all
okay.
that stuff.
I think because when Paul Feig was on, he talked about the Alf script that he wrote that never got produced. So it kind of makes me think we should go to successful showrunners and do readings of the spec scripts.
Cole and I are talking about putting on at Sketchfest next year, getting spec scripts like the one Chuck has
Wow, shoot big.
and staging live readings of them with really good people that are up there.
We should do that.
Yeah.
No, Sketchfest is good. It's like the biggest independent comedy festival in the United States. And
Poo-poo it all you want.
Yeah, Chuck.
Don't say poo-poo to me, bro.
But I think it'd be really great to line up a bunch of people and just get all theirs. Was there one that you are surprised never got made? Is there one that you're particularly proud of?
I actually remember when they brought back the Twilight Zone in the 80s?
Yeah, the new Twilight Zone.
I wrote one of those too. I forget
which one.
It didn't get made.
Oh,
no!
In a stunning.
It was basically the first door that opens. I'm going in.
Yeah,
and that was my master plan. The first door that opens.
Yeah.
I'm going in, and I'm not playing any more weddings in Tarzana. And
now you just do that for fun,
and just for fun, and
just
show up. It's and you get free dinner and stuff,
free protein,
kids. But then, how long were you writing before the Untitled Chuck Lorre project? It's like, oh well, you've been writing long enough. Maybe it's time for you to kind of run your own thing.
After 2 years on Roseanne, Marcy Carsey and Tom Warner came to me and said, "We want you to write a pilot," and I was like, "Well, yes." I mean, they were the most powerful company in town at the time in comedy. So whatever you want, I'll write anything. I'll write about the phone book, anything you want.
What was it like navigating all the stuff that was going on that show that was not just the show?
I didn't have to navigate it because I wasn't running that show. I was
just writing.
I was a lieutenant. So the main job was to keep your head down.
Yeah.
It was volatile.
Holy shit.
Let's call it volatile. Yes, let's just stick with that word. But it was, it was a good learning environment. I mean, it was boot camp. You learned, or you got shot out of a cannon.
Was the room kind of was there an air of fear in the room?
No, my friend Bob Meyer ran the room the 2 years I was there, and he ran a great room. He actually taught me most of what I know about running a room.
Which is
because
like
collaboration. I mean, his ears were open to anything, and he wasn't running the show out of ego and a need for himself to get his own words on the page. He just wanted the best words on the page,
the funniest stuff, yeah,
the best stuff, and he didn't really care who said it.
Yeah,
and we would yell and scream and argue, and he'd sit patiently and let it happen, And out of that cauldron came better material, and we'd write first drafts and then bring in the first drafts to the room, and the room would just tear them to shreds. And the obvious thing that I didn't like it, but I couldn't avoid recognizing that my scripts got better, way better, 100 times better as a result of being subjected to that process. I wanted my first drafts to be flawless, but they weren't even close.
Right.
So the room really was a magic part of making those scripts work, and he created a room that did that.
There really is a chemistry. It's such a precise chemistry to balancing a good writer's room and trying to figure out like how to have. Oh, these people need to complement these people, and then this person is a really strong joke writer, but then this person's good with story, and then having a head writer that the other writers actually respect and will listen to.
Mm-hmm. That's a big thing.
But it's not easy to manufacture that.
But you recognize that certain people have certain strengths.
Yeah.
And they're all valuable for the finished product to be something you can be proud of.
The process, I mean, as an outsider, because I'm not a writer, I mean, the level of, pushing down ego issues that all the writers have to have, because I've seen when they pitch things, during tapings, they will pitch things. I would cry, if an idea of mine did not even get, used, and that you have to do that, right? I mean, they just keep throwing things out there.
Yeah, the attrition rate's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable to me. Yeah. I mean, like, it makes me cry when I just watch the process.
By the time you see a script, you haven't seen 50 ideas that were thrown out for that story, So the process works. It's actually pretty efficient, even though it seems inefficient.
But I think also you'd be so under the gun of, well, we have to get a show produced, I don't think you would stop to process it that much emotionally, because you'd be like, okay, well, how about this?
Well, I think it's a different personality type, though. You know, like I could not tolerate that. I wouldn't make it in that environment. You know, our writers are people who, they just have ideas and you keep spitting them out, and some of them stick and some of them don't. As an actor, it's a very different process. Like, people always say, like, oh, do you guys improvise? No, because everybody's writing for us.
Yeah, but as a scientist, you understand that that things that you have to fail a bunch before you find something that works.
Yeah, but that's also not fun, you know. And being a scientist, you know, you're often alone. You know, writing a thesis is a solitary project, so, you know, you're up against your own rejection, but it's a different culture, you know, that writer's room.
I mean, I always love to meet people who were performers as children and somehow not only survived that process, but also thrived. And oftentimes, you know, when I talk to people, the common thread seems to be like, well, they had parents who gave a shit or looked in. Was that part of your experience too?
I don't want to say I didn't have parents that gave a shit.
Say it.
No,
they got you a dentist, right?
They got me. They got me. A dentist.
You got your own dentist.
You know, I don't know if there's one thing. You know, I know a lot of people who, you know, who didn't survive, sometimes literally, you know, and sometimes figuratively, from our childhoods. And, you know, I hate to say, well, this is why, you know, I came out of it like this. You know, I think every story is very unique. My parents were first-generation Americans, so I was raised with a very, like, immigrant, you know, kind of mentality. And they tried to keep my life as normal as possible. You know, I was still responsible for myself and my things. Also, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I worked for Whit Thomas. You know, I worked for Whit Thomas Harris and Whit Thomas. I was on Blossom from 14 to 19.
Oh, my God.
And I'm very, very lucky. We had a very clean set. I didn't see drugs and drinking, you know, on set. I didn't go to parties. Back then, there was no publicity machine that was telling young actors to look like adults or act like adults and go to parties. Of course, there were individuals who did that, and you saw them in the media, but it was much more infrequent. There wasn't really a culture of partying. You know, Johnny Galecki and I worked together when we were 14, and neither of us were out clubbing, you know, at night. And so it was very different, but I think it's more that I come from a very, you know, conservative kind of old world mentality home, that I was kind of very cloistered, you know, from a lot of that stuff. But I went to public school in LA my whole life, and you know, there were kids who weren't child actors who also, you know, had a really hard time coping, not with drugs and alcohol, but with being sober without them. So,
sure.
You know, so I think you see it a lot of different ways. But I think for me, you know, both my parents were teachers, and having immigrant grandparents who, you know, never finished elementary school or junior high, you know, it was like, you have to go to college. So to me, that was always something that I knew I would do. And, you know, I was kind of an accidental child actor. You know, I started acting what's considered late for children, you know, when I was starting junior high, because I liked school plays, and I thought, you know, I like making people happy. And when I do things right, the audience is happy.
Right.
That was really my motivation. I'm not like an ego actor of like, tell me I'm great, you know, right? It was much more like, oh, it feels good when they're happy. It feels good when a writer's happy, you know? So for me, I was kind of a late bloomer to the industry, and I was cast in Beaches a year after starting acting. It was really like a whirlwind. I was always like a, you know, kind of geeky kid who never fit in. So I wasn't taken with Hollywood life. I wasn't like, this feels great.
Right.
You know, I'm so awesome. And everybody tells me all the time. You know, I was an awkward looking child. I'm an, you know, relatively unusual looking adult. So like, for me, it wasn't like everyone now sees how fabulous and gorgeous I am. You know, there was a tremendous amount of scrutiny for non-traditional looking females when I was a teenager. And so I was happy to, you know, use my brain and study science, which is what I fell in love with in high school.
But I feel like a lot of people would have been kind of crushed from the weight of conforming to society standards, especially aesthetic society standards,
Sure.
and maybe would have, you know, like glug glug glug,
Yeah.
you know, and for some reason, you pursued science, like you went inward.
Well, I really did go inward, you know. I mean, for me, you know, my vice is work and, you know, being in here. So for me, being a student was very comfortable. I didn't socialize. I didn't go out much, you know. I dedicated my life to being appreciated for my intellectual capacity, you know, and I minored in Hebrew and Jewish studies. I learned Hebrew. I studied Yiddish. You know, I did all these things that, human beings should have a right to do, even if they were on television, But I think, I think for me, there, especially as a female, and this is something, I write a lot about and I talk a lot about, there always was this fantasy, like maybe I'll trip and fall and break my nose and they'll have to fix it and it'll be small and I'll look like all the girls in my class, There always was this notion of like, what would it take to be like other people? And I think one of the comforting things about being now a grown-up is it doesn't bother you as much. Like, I still know I'm not like a lot of other people, but you get more comfortable in your skin as you get older. But, I credit therapy. I credit a lot of good support for, all of the challenges of life. Because being in the public eye is hard, even when there's no, internet the first time round.
It's so hard to say that, because to a child who might feel like, oh, I'm not, I don't conform to these standards that other people seem to like, and other people mention there's popular kids and there's beautiful kids, and, but when you look back, what you want to say to a kid is like, yeah, I know, but they'll peak early. Yeah. You got to just trust me. They'll peak early and you'll do great things. Like, you'll do great things if you use your mind and you figure out creative ways to,
Yeah, I don't know that my parents knew to do that. Neither of them were scientifically inclined, and they had their own issues and, resources or lack thereof. So my mom always said, they're just jealous of you. They're jealous of you. Really, Mom? Because they're teasing me all the time and they say I'm ugly and I have no breasts yet. They're jealous. How could they possibly be jealous?
Yet? You have no breasts yet. But
I said to her, I think honestly something I've talked about in therapy, like that really, it messes with your concept of reality, because there was no notion that they were jealous. It didn't feel like that. What could they be jealous of? Like, that's really not, but I think that's all they knew, that's all they knew to do and say. And when people ask what's the difference between academia and, being an actor on The Big Bang Theory, I mean, the ego stuff is about the same in the industry for actors as in academia. That's still a huge part of it. But, not having to worry really about your public face is something I do miss,
Yeah.
I used to go to school in my pajamas. Everyone in the sciences did, I sometimes go to work in my pajamas a lot now.
I feel like that's allowed. I feel like that should be allowed.
Sure.
But I wanted to ask you, kind of based on your talk with Neil, how do you kind of balance, and maybe this is a dumb question, so I apologize in advance, but how do you balance your religion and your science?
I don't really feel a conflict, I'm Jewish, and the Torah is not a science book, that's how I do it. So it's like, I wouldn't go to the Torah to find out how the world was created. Go to a science book and all of the, understanding of science. But, for me, having a notion of a power greater than myself is helpful. It's humbling and it's grounding. It gives me perspective. And, I feel like for me, when I started kind of learning more about the philosophy of religion and understanding why humans behave the way they do in structured, groups, for me, it gave me a lot of comfort. And I'm a person who likes structure and I like ritual. And I'm part of a people that, is, even if we're not religiously identified, we're culturally identified for thousands and thousands of years. So, for me, I don't really feel a conflict about it. Everything beautiful I learn about science affirms my faith that I didn't make it. And everything beautiful about feeling connected to something bigger than me makes me wonder about the neurochemistry behind that set of sensations and where is consciousness in the brain and what does it mean to feel in love with someone. It's generally a lot of chemistry, and I love knowing about that, and I think that's divine. I think the brain's, it's an unbelievable thing. That's why I chose to study that in particular.
Well, I'm glad, and I wasn't trying to front load with, like, how could you? Like, I'm just
but I get that too.
Just genuinely curious, because you know there are lines where it's like, oh, some of these don't meet, and some people are maybe more one side than the other. And
I mean, to me, I feel like there are such bigger issues both in religion and in science, to conquer rather than how do they exist. And it's not that different from the question, how can you be, how can I be a feminist and also really domestic? I mean, a lot of people say, like, if you're such a feminist, how could you have children and have them tie you down? Because people are people, and we're all sorts of things. You don't have to pick.
Isn't the secret sauce behind that you choose what you want?
Sure. I mean, by that same token, and this is, we could talk about this, you could say, I choose to be a sex worker, So
right.
I think it gets a little more complicated, but, I'm a lot of things, and I don't have to say that because I'm a religious person, I can't be a scientist.
Absolutely.
And most of the religious people that I know don't think that either. And I have met religious people who really believe in the creation story, and that's really nice, but even, like that's not what it says to do. This is not the book to use as your science book. This is a religious, historical, spiritual document.
I read an interesting article. There's a guy, I might fuck up his name, but I think it's Robert Maxwell. Anyway, he's documenting right now. He's been kind of digging through the ashes of Chernobyl and just kind of seeing, like, kind of excavating, what this was.
Wasn't that your second spec script? For
that was
Golden
the second
Girls?
special for Golden Girls. Was digging through the ashes of Chernobyl.
I Choose to Be a Sex Worker.
I'm sorry.
That was my second.
Okay, so that would have been Blanche. That was a Blanche-heavy
I'm sorry.
script.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I don't mind at
Chernobyl.
all. This is like, listen.
That's what this podcast is.
You jump in and you riff whenever you want. This is about your time. I want you to riff and fuck around as much as you want to.
We get to say fuck.
We
You
do.
do. You can say
I
whatever,
saw
you can say
that.
whatever you want. But he had a quote that I absolutely loved, which he says, history is what people say happened, and archaeology is what actually happened. And it is that kind of like, let's. The stories are nice, but let's get to what the science
right. And
is.
I took a course in biblical archaeology, which is fascinating when I was in college. And I think the fact is also like you have to decide what's important and what's of value from these stories. I have a 7-year-old, and we watched Prince of Egypt and we watched Exodus, Gods and Kings this Passover. Because I figured here are movies about this season, and he said to me, "So, Mama, did it really happen?" And I said, that's a great question. I said, there are a lot of ways to answer it. We can talk about the Sea of Reeds, and there could be a storm, and it's very shallow, but if there's a storm, But I said, the fact is, like, what's important is what we choose to take out of it, We have a meal every year where we talk about the story, and we celebrate freedom and talk about freeing people from oppression all over the world. That's the purpose of the story, and not to have, a political or philosophical argument about did a miracle happen.
Right.
To me, that's, like... That is a discussion for another time, but for me, when I'm choosing to raise my children with a religious faith, like, it's about what do they take from these stories that will make them go out into the world and right things that are wrong.
Right.
To seek justice and pursue it. Like, to be people who help other people. That should be the purpose. Got it.
I mean, it's nice to hear this idea of using it as like as a guide to remind us so we don't make the same mistakes over and
which
over
we
again.
keep doing.
Of course we do.
Like, if we were done making those mistakes, I'd say no one needs religion at all,
Well, I think, no matter what generation it is, although it does really feel like things are a lot worse now.
It really does. I will go ahead and agree with you
I want
there.
to go ahead and say it feels like things. But who knows? In the 60s during the Cold War, when everyone thought we were a minute away from nuclear annihilation, maybe they thought that
but you
way
were
too.
on your own, not connected to anybody. Didn't know there were crazy fringe groups that could find each other and get together.
Constantly
and
reminded all the
share
time.
things on Facebook.
Well, it's we're in clickbait culture now. We're in the media's the sort of we need to drive traffic, so we're going to report on the worst angles of everything possible because we know people will click on that.
Sure.
We know that will drive traffic. I mean, we are in a fearocracy right now where it's fucking terrifying to look at anything. I mean, do you?
That's what sitcoms are for.
That's exactly what sitcoms are for because it's like a 30-minute window to not have to. Worry about
21:30.
21 minutes, yeah. 21 and some
24.
commercials. We watch the commercials because they're very important. Advertising pays for television, and that's why it's important to watch all the commercials. But
This is brought to you by Les Moonves.
but
Hallowed be his name.
But speaking of structure, though, do you talk about your sobriety much? Do you talk about sobriety much?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a personal thing for me. But, it does play in very strongly into what Mayim was talking about a spiritual life that allows for any of this to happen.
Yeah.
My dirty little secret is how much I pray in the writing room. Please, I don't know how to do this. I don't like these people. I want to go home. Help me. I can't do this anymore.
Drops on the floor.
I don't know why there's no second act.
It's like
please.
someone just like throws a blanket over you, like just let him sleep here.
No. It's very much recognition that that self-will is not going to do it.
Well, I think there's also this. I think there's a general misconception where people think, oh, well, Chuck Lorre, he's one of the most successful television people ever. This guy doesn't have any problems. How could you have a fucking problem? But I would imagine it's hard to not take home the pressure of a lot of people depend on you. A lot of different, it's, hundreds, thousands of people potentially.
No, you can't think. I never think that way.
You don't take it home.
No. I mean, what I do on any given day is, what do we have to do now?
Right.
I mean, it's really that simple. We have to fix that scene that didn't work yesterday, and that's what we do. And we just do that. And there's no big picture. It's just, why isn't this funny? Let's make it funny or cut it. So it's a task-oriented kind of thing. You don't get caught up in the big picture. Doesn't exist in the writer's room or on the stage.
For us too, we're asked that too. Like, how does it feel to have 20 million people watching? And we one day at a time it. It's one episode at a time. And for us, our 200th episode was as important as our 198th and as our 203rd. You can't. I mean, at least for us, and I think for them as well. We take them one at a time. We make the best show that we can every Tuesday in front of a live audience. That's our job.
I think everybody that's what makes the show so special. I mean, not to just sit here and plug it, but it's true. We don't treat the audience cavalierly. They could go away if we don't make a good show. The relationship is so fragile. There's so many other things you could be doing. So every show matters. Every moment of every show matters, frankly, because an accumulation of mundane or unfunny moments is a bad show. So it can make you crazy, but the reward of hearing a live audience explode with laughter is extraordinary.
Or hearing the deafening silence of something that needs to be rewritten is also equally powerful.
You can hear the 134 freeway from our stage when it doesn't work. You really can hear it's the silence is sucks your soul right out.
It's two sides of the same coin. This is the play of your words and how they are received.
Yeah, and the live audience is a litmus test. It really does. They're there to. They come. It's a tough ticket to get now to come see The Big Bang Theory live, but they're still there, responding or not, based on the quality of the material.
Well, that's good because it does. It is nice to know that you're earning it. That if the audience isn't always going to laugh every time just because.
Well, but isn't the laugh after much more gratifying?
What do you mean?
If you don't get a laugh and you break and the writers fix it, and then you go and you hit that laugh?
Absolutely.
It's really gratifying when you get it right the first time. But the audience taught us a lot from the very beginning. We started to learn that the audience is very protective of these characters. There's a naivete to especially the guys. And they have a protective, take on them. And when we were doing material early on, where I hadn't understood that this is a different tone than 2.5 Men, drastically different tone, and the material got too risque, the audience. Not only was there silence, you could hear, you'd hear 200 people go, and they really did not want these characters to go down that road. It was inappropriate for them. They had basically adopted them and said, no, here's how they are. And to a certain extent, you have to honor that. To a certain extent, if you honor too much, you kill yourself and you'll kill the show by pandering to what you think they want. But they help teach us the tone of the show.
I mean, are you still discovering these characters?
Oh,
yeah, we discover them because we don't write them ourselves, We get new things every week, and when people say, oh, what's going to happen later this season, I learn about it just like you learn about your life. I learn about it as it comes. We get a script the night before, we start to work on it the next day, and we have a week. One of my favorite episodes we did was when we found out Sheldon was a hoarder. And it was such a sweet episode, and it was such a physically confining episode. We were just in his, storage unit. Yeah. And for me and Jim, it was very uncomfortable because we literally couldn't move, but that's where those characters were. It was a new piece of information, and we had to figure out how to deal with it. I mean, our characters had sex for the first time, and Jim and I weren't even ready for that. And we had to really figure it out. Like, what does it look like? Where are we at? What does it mean? And that's our job, That's our job. We play make-believe every week, but it's not material that we've created. It's whatever our writers create. We are crafted from their clay.
Well, but this sort of packet switching of going back and forth between, what does your week look like? Is it ever, is everything in production at the same time?
Mm-hmm, pretty much.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you spend one day at each show? Or?
Sometimes it feels like
No,
it.
you run back and forth sometimes during the day. But, you can't talk about the Big Bang Theory and the quality of the writing without talking about Steve Malero, who's been the showrunner the last couple of years and has grown the show emotionally.
I know Steve. He's a really nice guy.
He's just,
He's our people.
He's our people.
The show in the last couple of years has gone far, far beyond where I could have taken it. So, I mean,
But Chuck
you got to have a shout out for that.
And
that's that group of people in the writers' room are they're amazing.
He's being very modest, though. I mean, he's at our run-throughs. He's there. We know when he's not there, and we feel it when he's not there. He parents all of us,
I mean, it's not,
He brings you all protein.
He brings
and he takes you to the dentist.
My children can go to the dentist because of this.
Protein going on.
Protein on stage 12.
The Will Wheaton tie-ins are delightful, just because Will, he's such a sweetheart, and Will, Will was someone who would tell you was kind of rejected by television for so long and painted into a box and had difficulty being whatever the rest of television wanted to be, and then finally here comes a show that's like, oh, you just get to be Will. Like,
he's our and our show is for the Will Wheatons of the world. Like that's what's so much fun about having him there. I mean, at least for me.
So what do you got? Was there anything you wanted to plug besides Big Bang while you're here?
Or plug the slots?
No, don't plug the slots.
You couldn't have given a better plug to the slots. I drive 4 hours. I give the money. I drive home.
Yep. But he made it. But the way that it was presented made it sound kind of sad. So I don't know if that was really helping.
Sad about the
you.
way I escape.
Listen. If I get an opportunity to plug anything, I try and remind your viewers, your listeners, there's nobody viewing. To watch Mom.
People are seeing with their ears.
To watch Mom, because that's been a great source of pride and passion for me for the last couple of years.
Very good friends with Kevin Pollak, and you killed him.
We did. We did. Yeah. He's smart ass. Guess what?
No one's safe.
Read this script.
Yeah. Oh, we can't kill you, huh?
We love Kevin. He was great. And it was just, that was a hard decision to make, but the show was very much about these women struggling to deal with life on life's terms without medication. And sometimes life deals that card. And I wanted to see what would happen if we took away a relationship that was starting to, fill up Allison Janney's character's life, and Anna's, it was her father. So we've taken some chances on that show and trying to push the envelope a little bit, storytelling wise, and it's been really gratifying. I just came back from Washington D.C. where we did a panel with the Surgeon General about addiction at the White House.
Oh wow!
Which was really amazing.
Was that what she was doing in the White House when she?
The press secretary. Pitch that idea. You want to go and do the press thing, and you'll pretend you're CJ, and great, do it. Yeah, so.
What is the Surgeon General panel about addiction? What are they?
It's about there's a White House program called Champions of Change, and they're basically taking people and singling them out, bringing them to Washington to talk about things they're doing differently. Mm-hmm. Like they had a police chief from the Boston area who'd I'm going to get this entirely wrong, but something along the lines of he got it out there that anybody who calls the police department and says, I have a drug problem, they will get them help. No questions asked, no criminal charges, no police-ness.
Right.
Just call us. We will get you to a sober living facility, a detox unit, whatever you need. And so he was part of a panel as well. So they had people from all walks of life in the country who were doing things a little differently.
I wish I would. I mean, I've been in recovery for 13 years, and if there's any, I would love to be able to.
Fender Bills, how about that?
Speak. Yeah, I would love to speak. I mean, like if there are panels of this nature where people are saying, how can we get help, or do we have any ideas? I mean, I think that would be really great to be able, because I get a lot of emails from people. Mm-hmm. About I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I should, and I always say like, if you're that conscious of it, it's probably something you should explore.
Yeah. Virgins don't think they're pregnant, but yeah. And the show has been basically, the subliminal message is there's hope that recovery is possible.
Yeah,
and it doesn't, and it's not grim. It's not a grim, grinding road. There's a lot of laughter in it, which, as you know, is the truth of it. If it was grim, nobody'd want to do it.
Have you ever thought about doing kind of a darker, maybe single camera dramedy about addiction or recovery? Or
Mom's fulfilling all that right now.
This man speaks in sitcom.
And every time I pitch anything other than a 4-camera sitcom, I notice network and TV executives look down at their shoes.
So you want us to the same camera 4 times? No. It's
just one camera and be a very,
so we're gonna
very razor's edge kind of.
I don't understand. What do we get? Jimmy Burrows doesn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to do that.
But it's even interesting listening to you. Like, it's easy to see why you're good at what you do, because any show that you mention, you immediately talk about what it's about or what the script is about. And years ago, Jon Stewart had said something that was really interesting, which is like, a show has to be about something. What is it about? Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's the most fundamental question that a lot of people don't ask when they're setting out to,
they ask what happens, and what happens is irrelevant.
What are the jokes? But the jokes are so funny. It's like, but it's not about anything.
And it's always who. It's never what, where, or why. It's who. Who are these people, and why do I care?
Right.
Because I think if that's the fun. That's the magic trick of a half-hour comedy. Do I care about these people? And that's part writing, part the actor. And some actors have that ability to create empathy just at hello. This lady here does. Oh. Yeah. It's remarkable, but you can tell the difference. And if you sit in enough
people
auditions.
People feel sorry for me everywhere I go.
When empathy, not
You're right.
Caring, compassion,
right?
And it's kind of alchemy in a way to have an audience give a damn. You cared about the characters in Cheers. And as caustic as they were, you cared about the guys and the woman in Seinfeld. That cast, you wanted to be part of that group.
Right.
You wanted to have a beer with Norm and Cliff. There's something about that surrogate family that pulls you in.
Well, because they all represent, and I think a lot of it is finding what is the humanity of this character. Like, what is the humanity, no matter how far out the character might be. What's human about that character that I can relate to. I may not have their same set of issues, but right. I get it.
Yeah, and if you can see a little bit of yourself or your brother, your sister, your mother, your father in that character, the character ceases to simply be an actor in a TV show.
How do you pitch? How do you pitch a show? Like, what is your What is the Chuck Lorre guide to pitching a show?
Be Chuck Lorre.
It helps, it helped it helped to have 2.5 Men on the air doing as well as it was doing when I went to CBS and said I want to do a show about quantum physicists.
Right.
Because the dead-eye face was...
They just had to scoop a pile of money out of it. What? You say something? Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, it helped. I had the benefit of the doubt. It was easier to say I want to do a show about physicists and their attempt to live in the real world, based on the fact that 2.5 Men's working. And in fact, we did the first pilot so badly.
For Big Bang?
For Big Bang, there's 2 pilots. The first pilot was an absolute train wreck. We didn't understand what we were doing, and they called and said, "Would you do it again?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely. It sucked."
What sucked about it?
It was written badly, for starters. We had Jim and we had Johnny, and we didn't have Simon, we didn't have Kunal, we didn't have Kaylee. We didn't understand what we were doing yet, and the first one was a trial by fire, and we learned a lot. We learned how vulnerable and you know what? I remember saying to Bill when we got to do it again, let's take all the story out and just write about these people. Just nothing happens. And if you go back and look at the Big Bang pilot, these 2 guys meet this beautiful young woman, and one of them is totally enamored with her, and she asks them to do her a favor and sends them on a mission. They fail. And then they go to dinner. That's the pilot. That's the entire pilot. Literally nothing really happens except you get just a little bit of a window into these extraordinary characters. And we were really fortunate. We just got hit by lightning across the board with all the casting. And then 3 years later, Mayim and Melissa made the show expand in an unbelievable way.
And I also think it's very important to have... Because someone said to me, I don't remember what it was, but I'm getting married soon and my fiance likes all the same stuff that I like. And someone said, is she going to make you get rid of all your movie props and action figures and stuff? And I was like, no, because I'm marrying someone who likes the same things I like. And there is still this stigma that's like, oh, nerd culture is a guy thing. And I keep saying to people, like, it's fucking not a guy. Like, it is a thing. There's not race bound. It's not religion bound. It's not gender bound. And so I feel
it's skybound.
It's sky.
That's a nerd
That's
joke.
Robert Kirkman's. But you know, do you feel that, like, representing characters on television who are in this world, that it's particularly important to, like, these need to be specific characters to represent them properly?
I think what's kind of interesting, you know, I'm a person in real life, you know, who is on the nerd and geek, you know, tip. Just tried to make it cool. But our female characters, you know, Melissa Rausch plays a microbiologist, and my character is a neurobiologist. Neither of them are geeks in the show. And we did do a lot of episodes, at least early on, you know, where the guys would be into D&D and the girls weren't into that. And so I actually think what's neat about our show is we're kind of showing the full gamut of male and female scientists, you know, and when people say, like, oh, your show stereotypes women, and I say, well, actually, you know, no. Even just in Bernadette and Amy, we have two very different kinds of female scientists, you know. Amy's very kind of frumpy and, you know, unadorned. And the Bernadette character, you know, she wears little headbands and cute little sweaters and things. And the fact is, there are all those different types. So, you know, it was a writer's choice to not make the girls equally geeky and into, you know, all of the things that the guys are. But to me, that's part of, you know, kind of showing all the variety of different types of people. And if you want to think about the difference between nerds and geeks, our females fall more into the nerd rather than geek category, whereas the guys kind of fall into both.
Yeah, I think see Steve's head spin if there's not enough girls in the comic book store.
That's right.
Yeah, I just get so upset.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think you also have the ultimate card to play on people when they go, I don't know if this, and you're like, no, I'm a scientist.
I know. Well, when I first watched a clip of Jim Parsons, because I was told they wanted a female Sheldon Cooper, and I was like, who's that? So I googled Jim
She doesn't
Parsons.
get to watch a lot of TV, Chuck. She's very
I
good.
didn't watch TV at that time, and I watched about 15 seconds of Jim Parsons doing a Sheldon monologue, and I said, oh, I know people like this. I can do this, and I turned it off. And I know plenty of people like all of these characters. I went to school with them. I am a lot of all of these characters too. So for me, that's super fun.
I went to UCLA as well.
Yes, you studied philosophy.
How did you know that?
I looked you up a little. I knew a little bit about you.
Okay, well, that's all you need.
Yeah, I took some classes in your department.
You did, and I took a couple classes in your South Campus department.
Did you put
too.
on your pajamas to come to South Campus?
I did not put on my pajamas to come to South Campus, but I remember taking Microbio 6, which I think was Introduction to Microbiology.
Yeah.
And I liked South Campus, but I entered as a math major, and then I found it too structured, and then so I ended up in the philosophy department, which was like a complete lack of, you know.
It's the study of unstructure.
It's the study of unstructured, but it's inherently structured because they're still grading you.
Sure.
So it's like, how can you give me a grade if everything is subjective?
That's what we wanted you to ask, Christopher. Here's your diploma.
Oh my God! I just get a diploma. I just started. It's my first day. I already
Yes,
got a
but you
diploma.
asked the right questions.
Jesus.
Have you discussed this with Eric Kaplan?
No, I haven't.
Because Eric's doctoral thesis,
Philosophy of Mind, yeah.
it was philosophy of mind.
He's one of our co-executive producers.
And in preparing this thesis, he proved that he didn't have to do it, and he quit. I guess he went to work for SNL after
That's
that.
right.
They must have given it to him.
He
after
walked
that.
away.
Well, that's why. I mean, I love. Well, math, I think, is easier for me sometimes to wrap my head around because there are definite answers in math and science. There are answers, but we just haven't figured out most
Sure.
of them.
No, math is a language. It's like if you look at it like learning a language. There's a structure to it, and there's semantics, and there's syntax, and
Yeah. I liked philosophy because Steve Martin was a philosophy major, and I thought it was great for comedy, and it was. But I always wish that I had the discipline to go back and
No, still plenty of time, Chris.
There's not. It's over.
Well, I think
I'm done learning,
Okay,
Matt.
fine. That's fair.
I don't fucking care anymore. No, but I would love to. You know, I think that's why it's so important to promote STEM. But what are schools doing to make science interesting for kids? I wish you could have seen the look in Mime's face. I was like, oh man.
not as much as they should be. You know, part of what I do is not only to put a friendly face on these subjects, but also a female face, you know, so that it is equally represented as for males and females. I think that a lot of girls may need something a little bit different to get them engaged earlier on, and I do talk a lot about that, the importance of mentorship and teaching about the breadth of science careers, because for young women especially, the notion of being alone in a lab is not appealing to many females, especially in elementary school and, junior high, when we need to sort of get their interest. So, I think we're swinging too far on the pendulum both ways in terms of, emphasizing testing scores versus emphasizing not testing scores. I think it's,
especially in the middle of Kardashian, where it's just like, hey, just be famous at all costs.
Yep.
Who cares? As long as you're famous, that's important.
I think that's a different set of challenges, and I think that is different for males and females. Much as there are certain things that are, like geek culture being, gender blind, there are certain things that are very different about males and females and social development. And the way our culture presents all of what is interesting does have a large impact.
We should probably mention our scholarship.
We should.
Oh, you should mention
while
this.
we're on the
We-
UCLA topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've created a scholarship, a Big Bang Theory scholarship for STEM students at UCLA.
Is that where my slot machine money goes?
No, that goes to that Adelson fella.
Oh, okay. Sheldon.
Yeah, Steve Wynn. I don't know where you. I don't
Depends
know
on where it was playing.
But we have a.
It's a financial based scholarship.
It's a
so
financial based scholarship, but it's based on both need and merit. And we had our first 20 freshmen this spring, and we're going to add, I think, 6 to 10 every year.
Oh, wow.
wow.
It's
Fantastic.
funded
It's
to
really
it's
cool.
about $4.5 million.
Oh, that's
Wow.
fantastic.
And hopefully it'll be one of those things that can run in perpetuity and go to other schools as well, and strictly for STEM students. So
And they are known as our Big Bang Theory
our Big
scholars.
Bang scholars, and they come to the stage, and it's wonderful. It's just an extraordinary thing to hang out with these kids because, what we're doing is, it's gap funding. It's helping them, so that they can just strictly do the work of being a student. But, get on a bus. You're coming over to the stage, and you're going to hang out and see a show and stuff like that. It makes it real, and it's not just a check. We can participate because it's local.
Right. Well, I think it's good for people because most of the time, particularly with scholarships, it's not like there's a face or a person that is associated.
No, I applied
with
for
it.
so many scholarships of like people with names that I didn't even recognize, and it's like this one scholarship. So for us, it's really cool that they applied to a lot of scholarships so that they could afford to go to school and not have to also work 2 jobs, which many people do.
Well, particularly in Westwood, which is one of the most expensive cities to live in, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't beat that traffic.
What?
It's terrible.
It is terrible.
I was in Westwood today. Like I know all the back routes so that I
Yeah.
can avoid all the traffic.
Blend in. You just
Oh, yeah.
sneak up.
I-
Yeah, you're behind
Hooked up
people, and
gaily
you're
to
like,
Kinross. Found my favorite parking lot.
Oh
Got
my
a spot.
God.
Yeah.
I was so pissed because I was never when I started UCLA in '89, and there was they did not have guaranteed.
How much
housing.
was parking? Do you remember?
It was so expensive.
When I started, it was $5 on campus. It's now, I think, $12.
Well, the funniest part about when I started was that my family moved here in '88, so I was here for a year, my last year. So I qualified for resident status. My first quarter fees were like $400 as a resident to go to UCLA, but I couldn't get guaranteed housing, so I fucking commuted from Pasadena, which was
it
was bad. Not to turn this into a Californian sketch, but it was god awful.
How did you get there? What freeway?
Well, some days, depending on the time, I would either take the 110 to the 10 over the 405, or maybe I would take the 134 straight up to the 405 and back to the Skirball Center.
That's the way I'd go.
Yep.
But there's no easy way to get to Westwood.
No.
It is traffic.
Todd didn't want to have lunch there today because of the traffic in Westwood.
Todd's not having it.
No.
Todd doesn't put up with shit. I can already see the moleskin has been put away. Todd is past. Todd gives no fucks.
That's why my music's the Westwood Music's, and I have to find parking.
Where's your music store? Is your
True Tone.
Yeah,
I love True Tone.
True Tone on Santa Monica around Lincoln.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it is.
What's your
Great
favorite
store.
guitar?
I've had a '64 Strat since '69. That's been my home instrument.
What is it? Two-tone? Is it Sunburst?
It
or-
used to be Sunburst. It's pretty worn out.
like Rory Gallagher's
Yeah,
now, or
it's
like...
pretty beat up. But believe it or not, it was beat up when I bought it in 1969.
Oh, that's great.
For I believe $200 with the case, and I thought, oh, I'm never going to pay this off.
64 Rosewood neck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I just got a 64 Jag,
Nice.
left-handed.
Ooh.
Yeah, try to find that.
Oh,
Good
wow,
luck.
you're a southpah?
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
I just got these clear D&D dice so you can see right through.
Yeah.
Just gotta. You should be. You play D&D much?
I have, yeah.
Have you done Critical Role?
No.
Oh, it's really fun.
I mean, I've seen him posting about it. I'd probably like that.
I did a couple
I've
weeks
got
ago, and it's
issues
really
with the
fun.
role play parts of certain campaigns. But
Yeah.
we can talk about it another time.
Interesting.
I cry sometimes when put on the spot to do D&D roleplay. I like rolling. I like strategy. I like the math. I like the logic. But I played with a group of actors last time, and it was way too actory.
Got it.
And I started to cry. It's a social anxiety thing. And I was like, I'm totally a D&D person, but I'm crying. This is not working.
The Critical Role gets dramatic sometimes.
I'm
Like,
fine with drama.
they
I'm
do.
fine with a different kind of drama.
Right.
But yeah. But I won't
yourself-
talk like this for my character the whole time. I
Let
promise.
me know that all means are on.
No.
Oh,
All right.
God.
No, I can't do it.
All right, maybe I can do that too easily.
Sounds terrible.
Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm broken. Guys, maybe I can't be myself. Are you going to go to Ren Fair? Are you going to go to Ren Fair?
Yes, I will go to the Ren Fair.
It's so great.
It's good times, yeah.
Do your kids like it?
Yeah, they are homeschooled, so a lot of people in the homeschool community here in LA love all things Ren Fair, and a lot of moms in our community where, of course, it's all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's actually they went already with their dad. They do a kid-friendly day
Yep.
where things are less bawdy and there is no cursing in the shows. So they went, but then I'll go again with them on a regular bawdy weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mainly like the swords parts of it.
Oh, it's so
And
much
I
fun.
like jousting.
Do you do the axe throwing where you throw the
I will
axe
not be
at the-
throwing axes
Okay,
now.
all right, you don't have to.
No, and I don't eat turkey legs, but I look at everyone who does.
I always have this weird.
Turkey legs. The cheese fries.
It's like the
They have them at Disneyland too, and it's hard for me not it's hard for me not to giggle at how horrifying. And I eat meat. I don't know, probably eating meat, but there's so much like that's how a turkey fucking walks. You're eating the way that
There's so much. Yeah, there's so much ligaments.
It's too much.
It's just.
It's so
looks-
Flintstonian. Like
It
when you
looks
would
like
eat those,
Bam Bam.
Yeah.
You know, that's all
yeah.
I think of.
But we just look like fucking animals. There's like chewing the sinew
It's
off
not-
the.
yeah.
It's so not good. You must go to Ren Fair regularly, right, Chuck? You seem like a guy who probably loves the
Pretty
Ren
much go
Fair.
to Jerry's Deli is as far out as I go.
There are turkey legs there as well.
There's a lot of turkey legs there as well. Yeah. Well,
It's not very far from the Radford Lodge. It's not going very far.
Nope.
Coldwater's too far. Coldwater too far. You go a couple blocks past Laurel, but then Coldwater is too far. Well, thanks. This is amazing.
Thank
so
you.
great, and thank you. I mean, you really are such a phenomenal role model, and I really
you.
hope that you do more public stuff.
Thank
so
you.
that people.
Well, Will is trying to be my best cheerleader, so he's trying to help make that happen.
Excellent. Well, please let us know anytime there's anything
Thank
we
you.
can do, and for you too as well. I mean, just it's I don't know if people understand. It is hard enough to get a show on the air, first of all. Then it is hard to keep a show on the air, then have that show be a hit, and then to do that numerous times is ridiculous. I mean, this business
With Emmy winners on all of your shows?
yeah. Yeah, this business does fucking suck, and I mean,
My life in show business.
well, it's just that it's there are a lot of things happen for reasons that are not just creative reasons, and that can be very frustrating.
Yeah. It's going to sound like so much bullshit, but I'm really grateful. I've been really lucky. So I try and stay with that. I got a lot of I got a lot of chances.
Yeah.
I got a lot of swings. So
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
It's good to see you both. Enjoy your burrito, everyone.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power. They're the world's most fearsome fighting team.
We're really hip.
Ninja Turtles. They're heroes in the half shell. And they're green.
Hey, get a grip.
When the evil Shredder attacks, these turtle boys don't cut 'em no slack. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage
Now leaving Nerdist.com. Enjoy your burrito.